And with the light of dawn, Hurricane George pulled away from Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. The hurricane's rain and deadly winds leave behind a disaster area of death and destruction. Now George is bearing down on the Dominican Republic, the next step in what looks to be a serious threat developing for the United States. Good morning and welcome to Weather Center. I'm Mark Mancuso. The projected path for George is just ahead, plus the stateside weather outlook for your day today. Orlando could see scattered thunderstorms later today. It could also be stormy later in Dallas, but it'll be sunny for you in Minneapolis. However, we'll first get the latest on Hurricane George from Rick Griffin in the Forecast Center.
Thanks a lot, Mark. Good morning. Well, the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico hit very hard by George yesterday and last night. This morning, the storm now centered in the Mona Passage, a strip of water between Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. The most intense part of George now hammering the southeast part of the country of the Dominican Republic, and we'll check it out on radar and satellite coming up in just a little bit. What we have for you on the screen is the 5 o'clock position, but we do have a new update and I'll read it to you. The latest position as of 7 o'clock Atlantic Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time is 18.2 north and 68.3 west. That puts the eye of George about 90 miles east of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. That's about 145 kilometers east of that particular city. George is moving west at 14, and the top sustained winds remain at 110 miles per hour. The pressure remains the same too at 970 millibars. Once again, Puerto Rico hit very hard. 5 fatalities so far. 659,000 people without power, although that number has varied considerably this morning. 700,000 plus people without water, and about 20,000 people now located in shelters on the island. Many homes and businesses have been damaged. Well, with that information in mind, let's go right to the phone and talk to Alejandro de la Campa. He's the FEMA Operations Director for the Caribbean region. Thanks a lot for joining us, sir, this morning. As Director of FEMA in the Caribbean region, what is your first priority this morning?
Well, our first priority is to help the people in Puerto Rico. That's why the President issued the emergency declaration for Puerto Rico. This assistance that we will be providing will be the use of federal personnel, equipment, and life-saving systems to the delivery of heavy-duty power generators, chainsaws, plastic sheeting, tents, cots, food, medical supplies, and other essential emergency materials for sustaining human life. That's part of the response phase. Later on will come the recovery phase.
Are there parts of the island that are that you can't get to help people out?
I'm sorry?
Are there parts of the island where you can't get because of the damage due to George, that so you can't help people out this morning? Do you know of any locations?
There are several municipalities where we haven't been able to have communication, specifically with the municipalities of Vieques and Culebra. Those are 2 islands in the East Coast. And also the municipality of Ceiba, we have information that all roads are closed either because of landslides, debris, floods. So yes, there are several areas where we have not been able to reach them, neither we have communication with them.
Thank you very much. That's Alejandro de la Campa, FEMA Operations Director for the Caribbean region in San Juan, Puerto Rico. We talked about what's happened with George so far. What about the future impact? Well, for Haiti and the Dominican Republic, heavy rain, and with sparse vegetation in some parts of that particular region and steep slopes, that could result in deadly flash flooding. As we go to Dr. Steve Lyons, Steve, even over flat terrain, this type of situation would produce tremendous amounts of rainfall, but we have 9,000 to 10,000 foot mountains in the Dominican Republic, and obviously that's going to enhance the rainfall amounts.
It sure is. We're really worried about how much rain may fall there. Of course, on the coast, the storm surge is important. One thing I want to mention here on the radar, you can, on the satellite imagery here. Here's the circulation center here, and right now this area is getting the highest storm surge, and of course this whole area in the rain band here is getting heavy rain. But over Puerto Rico here, as they start cleaning up, you need to be very, very careful, because there's another big batch of rain out here, and that's probably got a lot of lightning in it, and it could also produce some flash flooding. So as you get out there today, be very, very careful you don't get caught in the flash flooding. And on the radar scenario here, it's actually off the radar down and here a little bit farther off the screen and coming up here. So we're going to still have some more flooding in Puerto Rico all day today, even though the storm or the hurricane center has moved off.
In just a moment, Steve, we'll talk about the possible impact on the United States, and it is a potential threat for portions of Florida down the road a few days, and you'll give us your analysis on that in just a moment. Right now, let's check out the hurricane watches, actually hurricane warnings to begin with, and to start, they've been dropped for the Virgin Islands, and that means conditions will be improving, obviously, as the day unfolds and George moves away. But hurricane warnings remain in effect for Puerto Rico, certainly for the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and now for the southeast islands of the Bahamas, the Turks and the Caicos Islands, and there is that hurricane watch for the southeast Bahamas. Hurricane force winds extend out about 60 miles from the center of George, and 175 miles out from the center would be found tropical storm force winds. As you can see, the eye wall now hammering the southeast part of the Dominican Republic. Now, Steve, with this satellite picture, do you see anything that's going to change the general west movement of George and hopefully steer it away from the United States?
Well, right now it continues to look like it's going to be on a west-northwest track the next 24 to 36 hours. We don't see anything that's going to turn it back up to the north. You can see here the flow is out of the north here in these high clouds. There's a ridge of high pressure up here, a weak little trough in the mid and upper layers here, and so it's generally going to continue to move in that west-northwest direction.
Okay, here's our track forecast. The timing, if it's going to affect South Florida, what do you think about that at the moment?
Well, right now you can see here Thursday morning it should be somewhere in this general vicinity. Thursday late it should be somewhere in this general vicinity. Of course, the air in our forecast is this air bar here, so keep in mind that it could be north, it could be south, and of course as it moves over the Dominican Republic here, we'll have to see how strong it is when it comes back. These are the strike probabilities. This is the sort of the high strike probability area. But keep in mind also when we talk about the eye here that the overall wind circulation is fairly large, so you should look at the overall size of the hurricane for the potential impact to you and expect that you might get the worst downstream, especially if you go farther out in time to 48 and 72 hours. But in South Florida, they definitely need to be keeping an eye on it very, very closely.
Right. And we'll be refining the forecast, obviously, as we go through the next couple of days.
Right.
So stay with us for frequent updates on Hurricane George. Now, if you're away from your television for any length of time, you can get the latest on George on our website at weather.com. Now let's go back to the studio with Mark Mancuso.
And as we take a look at your weather this morning, the remnants of old tropical storm.
And that is moving off to the west, again at about 18 miles an hour. Coming up, we'll have more updates on George. The Storm Watch was brought to you by Home Depot. Stay with us.
Out in the eye and think everything is over and have the storm surge come in on you here, and potential drowning and other horrible things could happen.
See, that's a spectacular picture. What is the high terrain in the Hispaniola, Dominican Republic going to do to the circulation? Do you think it's going to weaken substantially? I guess it really just depends on exactly where the eye tracks.
Well, the 10,000-foot mountain range here and the size of the island here, we definitely expect it to weaken it more than Puerto Rico did. This is already as intense as it was before it hit Puerto Rico, and it just barely went over that area. So we expect it to weaken down to maybe a Category 1 or so. It's really difficult to say. But right now, the track looks like it's moving along the southern portion, which would keep it a little more intact than if it moves straight over the island. So if it does something like this and then north, it would be more intact than if it went straight over the top of the high terrain.
Okay, as you've been mentioning all morning, and we'll go back to our radar picture here, even though the eye is moving away from Puerto Rico.
Weekday morning. It is 9 minutes before the hour. Thanks for joining us on the Weather Channel for this edition of Storm Watch, which is sponsored by the Home Depot. Of course, we've been keeping you updated on our latest from the National Hurricane Center on Hurricane George. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Also, we'll check on local radar out of the Northeast, where we have rain showers this morning stretching from Hartford, Connecticut, northward to Boston, and even around the Baltimore area. We'll check on that in just a moment. First, though, let's detail the tropics, our tropical update. And here's the latest information on Hurricane George. It is centered at 18.2 degrees north, 68.5 degrees west. That makes it 80 miles east southeast of Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic. Winds are 110 miles an hour. It's moving west at 14 miles an hour, and there you see the lowest pressure, 970 millibars. Now, this is as of the 8 o'clock advisory, so just into us here this morning. We are watching the center of the storm as it moves away from Puerto Rico toward the Dominican Republic, and you notice its path over the last several days has almost been just basically directly northwest, and it continues to resume this path as we have seen over the last couple of hours. Our latest satellite picture shows the eye of the storm still pretty much in the middle of the overcast, dense clouds here. And you can see the brighter, the colder cloud tops being indicated by the reds and the oranges. Very heavy rain, many times associated when you see these cloud tops the color of red and orange. We've had significant, just heavy amounts of rain in Puerto Rico. We've had reports of over 80% of the residents in Puerto Rico are without electricity because of the very gusty winds and the heavy rain associated with George as it moved across the island. Let's look at the latest radar out of Puerto Rico. Of course, this is the island of Puerto Rico, and we saw the system come ashore yesterday on the east coast, and this morning it pushed off of the west coast. So it pretty much went the entire length of the island, and here is the easternmost part of the eye wall as it continues to certainly move away. Hurricane warnings remain in effect for Puerto Rico, Hispaniola, and that includes the Dominican Republic and Haiti, the southern Bahamas, including the Turks and Caicos Islands. Also, a hurricane watch in effect for the eastern tip of Cuba. Here is the strike probability now, and it looks as though it takes it in this path. We see the red. That's the most likelihood, the path of the storm. So it could be closer to the southern tip of Florida within 72 hours. So by Friday morning, we'll perhaps have to watch the system as it gets closer to the southern tip of Florida. Now, we do have some high mountains over the Dominican Republic, so this system could be broken up a little bit, or the circulation could be disrupted somewhat. So we will definitely watch it as it moves across Hispaniola over the next 6 to 7 hours. Now, other than George, we've been watching a couple of other systems. This is a tropical storm, and so is this one. Now, this is Tropical Storm Ivan. Ivan is moving north at about 13 miles an hour. It's moving into cooler waters and should weaken. Reports of shipping interest only, so really no problems in terms of making landfall. Jeanne is moving west, and we have several days to watch it.
Hurricane George continues its track through the Caribbean, headed to the U.S. coast. Your morning weather and a tropical update on Weather Center after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
As a customer, you're so important to us that you should have the best price all the time rather than just sometimes when other stores think it's convenient for you.
Home Depot doesn't have sales because we have an everyday low price.
The competitors have to have the sales because they jack their prices up so high. But we keep our prices low every day.
You would be out of your mind if you shop someplace else.